Hi, welcome to session 12. This is an additional one to session 11 where we were looking at sort of career options. And this is more about changing career. What I would recommend is that you still look at session 11 because some of those things will be relevant, working out your values, working out your strengths. So all of those things still apply, but if you like, this is an additional one. What I would also recommend is that when you are thinking about changing career, that you really sit down with a pen and paper and express yourself as honestly as you possibly can. What often I find is that people who want to change career have varying different issues to why, and they need unpicking. And what I would do is I would always address those. So, for example, often people wanted to change job or change career because of their current circumstances had deteriorated. So they had either issues with management, they had issues with their colleagues, excuse me, they had issues with their workload, all of which had become an overwhelming combination that made them feel that they have no option other than to leave. What I would always recommend is that you look at those different things separately, how you can address conflict, how you can remedy power imbalances, how you can feed back to managers about work and overload and work-life balance. There are lots of different ways of approaching that. I think systematically in this country, we don't tend to have great managers, and we tend to have a culture of you at your desk from 8 till 8. And productivity doesn't seem to be as important as time spent appearing to be at work. So what we have in the UK is a lot of people doing a lot of hours, and yet our productivity compared to other countries is nowhere near as high. That obviously is something that needs to be addressed on a bigger scale. But I think if you're aware of it, trying to work out how you can be productive rather than just labouring yourself for hours over the same emails or the same projects without actually feeling you're getting further forward is quite a crucial point. Simon Sinek is worth looking up on YouTube. He does loads of little videos, really good videos about sort of leadership and sort of management styles and things, and quite useful. And if you can get people that whether it's HR or your managers to sort of buy into that, it can make a huge difference. Sadly, unfortunately, it's not necessarily the manager's fault if that indeed is your problem. They are given a job and then they're given staff as well, and they're not necessarily given the time to do managing of people well. They're not necessarily been trained to do that. So there's lots of issues why you might be in a situation where you think, right, I just need to get out of this career or this job. And what I want you to do is make sure that you're addressing the correct issues first, and you're looking to remedy those before you make a big leap. So I'm making assumptions now that you've looked at those issues, but it's still a career or stroke job change that you're after. Hopefully you will have done the first few sessions of coaching, if nothing else, because they were the ones that kind of looked at, the wheel and the goal sheet, and I'll share my screen with you now. These are quite key when you're looking at this. So hopefully you will have done this already. And if you haven't, then you need to sit down and work out, where your career job is and where you are hoping it will be in 10 years' time. Now, this is just really to give you an idea of, again, what needs changing and how you're going to change it, if indeed you need to do that. It's amazing how, I would see clients who would have problems at home and go to work and be unhappy at work and come to me saying that the work was the problem. And as we unpicked it, it wasn't. If you are unhappy, that will manifest itself in the workplace, whether it's the workplace causing it or not. So I think it's just really important to be aware of that and have a look at, or indeed define your goals now. Where do you want to be? And again, sometimes this is quite an interesting one. I've had clients in the past who have, had one career, and in sort of 10 years' time, they want to be self-employed, or they want to run a caravan park, or or be retired and farm an olive grove in Italy. I mean, all sorts of real interesting options. If you come up with something like that, what I would ask is, and what will that get you? So if you are currently a teacher and in 10 years' time you want to be an astronaut, what is it that will get you? And then answer that question. And then follow it up with, and what will that mean to you? And keep following it and asking those probing questions. Because again, what's really important is that you don't just jump ship because you're in a situation where you feel overwhelmed at the moment. You want to understand why you're making those decisions, why you're making those changes that you want to make. So if it's to find happiness, find peace, if it's to be more financially secure, those are the answers you need to work out. Because again, what you then need to do is manage your expectations that shift will indeed achieve that. So an example I had was a salesman who wanted to become a firefighter. There were various different obstacles to why that hadn't happened, but that was the career change he wanted to make. We looked at the obstacles. One of them was his eyesight, and he went and got laser treatment to correct that. But what we then looked at when we were looking at his goal sheet is things like his relationships, his money, and his other desires. And the firefighter's salary was never going to deliver his other goals. So we discussed that at length. And ultimately, what we drilled down to is what was the firefighting role going to give him? And he felt that it was going to give him a sense of service, a little bit of the hero, but a sense of giving to the community, of helping the community, of doing good. And that was in stark contrast with his sales job, which was much more about the money, the deals, the accounts, chasing the deal all the time. So I can understand why the desire for the firefighting was there, but we knew the financial package wasn't. So again, this was all about unpicking and being honest and asking these questions, and could he give up those financial ambitions for the role? And it kind of didn't look like he could, which was a real eye-opener for him, because that wasn't what he was expecting. He'd always in the back of his head, almost from a youngster, decide, I'm going to be a fireman, I'm going to do that. And for him to sort of realise that his dream wasn't going to fulfil his other ambitions was quite an eye-opener for him. But then what we were able to do was explore, how can you get what it is that you desire another way? So there are always different solutions. So instead of for him to change career, what could he do to get the bits that he thought the firefighting role would give him? We looked at volunteering, we looked at St John's Ambulance, we looked at other different aspects where he thought, actually, I could get that sense of fulfillment without changing job and career. And that's really quite interesting. I mean, had he said, look, I don't care about the money, I don't care about my car, my status currently, I'm quite happy to forego that, then it would have been a different case. But it's about being really honest about what you want. And lifestyle choice is one of the hardest things to change, even if you want to change job. So we will come on to that. Let's have a look if I can. So one of the key things is, if you've sat down with your pen and paper, you've done your goals, you've really answered those questions honestly, and you genuinely do want to change career. So I can think of someone else who trained to be a chef, really good chef, but ultimately didn't see themselves doing that for the long term. Shifts, pay, the conditions, lots of things were not ticking the boxes. And ultimately, with chefing and being in catering, they're kind of things you can do in your day-to-day life as well. So it's not something you have to let go of to pursue another different career. And then to be able to do that, what does it take? And that's where you need to start strategizing to how you're going to make those shifts. And one of the first things that I always recommend people do is, which often is the biggest obstacle to anything, is whether they can afford to change career. I have had loads of clients who just said, I can't afford to, I can't afford to, I can't afford this, I can't. Well, if you want to retrain, if you want to change your job, you might not be able to go in at the same level. So you might be looking at a drop in salary. And it's really important that if you've done your goal sheet, if your values, if your strengths are lying within this new role, whatever it might be, don't dismiss it. Work out whether it's an obstacle in your head or whether it's a genuine obstacle. Because what we do is in our head, we say, well, it's going to be difficult, and the practicalities, and it's too much. And this is where the financial leverage comes in. Now, this is and I'm sure there are ones online that you can now use. This just happens to be Martin Lewis's money saving expert budget planner. I know that I've also got like an Excel spreadsheet that I'll lead you through as well. And I recommend that you do this. Now, this is one of those really dry, frustrating exercises. So you might want to sit with somebody and do it. But what it allows you to do is really look at the nuts and bolts of your situation, rather than what in your head is your situation. So currently you might not feel like you have much disposable income. You might find that you're running from pay packet to pay packet, from payday to payday, but that doesn't mean you have to run that way. You might not be running financially efficiently, or you might be. So, but this difference can be massive. So what a budget planner enables you to do is really work out at what you earn, what is your income, what are your outgoings, what are your insurances each month, what are your costs for your car, where are the expenses from an essential point of view and from a pleasure, leisure, desirable point of view. And it really just means that you need to go through it all. So your mortgage, your rent, your phone, your licenses, your phone bills, what you eat, what you drink, whether you smoke, what you pay for transport, your car, loans, credit, family costs, any savings that you might have, things that you just automatically do. It's amazing how many people are just, assume that their nail care, their hair care, their beauty regime is a compulsory element that they can't do without. And they might decide that they can't. But then that's the choice that they're making when it comes to a career swap or a change of job and a change in salary, is that you are deciding and you're making those choices, which ultimately you can console yourself with if you sort of said, right, well, I knew I could financially make this career change or go into this training or retrain, but I know I've decided not to, because actually my creature comforts were more important. And that's a decision made, isn't it? And then you can just shelve the ideal of, oh, one day I'm going to be, you've got to have realistic goals rather than idealistic ones. So once you've gone through all of these, you hopefully will come up with, your totals, what your monthly spends are, and then you can see if at all there are any cuts to be made. Again, I've seen so many clients over the years. People's homes versus occupants has changed significantly in the last 50 years. Kids don't share bedrooms now. I don't know why, but it seems like every child is entitled to their own bedroom. I know clients that I've had that have moved into a 5-bedroom house and they've only just got the one child. And what happens is the house itself becomes a massive responsibility, a massive financial outgoing when you can only be in one room at once. I've had clients who are having to go back to work without even taking maternity leave, for example, because their financial commitments are so heavy without real need. Now, people would argue that property is a good thing to invest in, etc., etc. But if on the short term it means you are working yourself into the ground and pushing yourself to do jobs that you're unhappy doing, I would argue you need to weigh that up and downsize. Kids are fine sharing bedrooms. We are only ever in one room at once. So how many rooms in a house do you need? You might be keeping up with the Joneses, but you're not keeping up your mental health. So, but again, be really honest about what your circumstances are. Now, also that doesn't take rent into account. We know rent is really high at the moment. And those, don't offer you a great deal of choice. But again, the smaller property you can rent, the better. It's all things you want to look at. So I think I mentioned, and I'll see if I can share this screen as well. So again, this is all from Money Saving Expert, and this is a number of years old. But it does, in a really systematic way, it takes you through from getting started, all your outgoings, and the reason why I would recommend that you use something like this is because without it you'll forget something. It's inevitable. We can't retain all this information in our head. So getting started, what you earn, what you spend, all the spending tools, and then checking your results. I mean, there's great ways of doing this. So you actually just input, and it gives you the results. So seek one out that can do the job. And then what that will do will give you the margin of movement that you have. So your salary, is 35,000. You thought you couldn't take anything less. Well, maybe there's a wiggle room to 30. Maybe there's a greater room, because then when you start taking in partners' incomes and things you can pull back on, it's all up for grabs. Cost of living currently, and this is sort of 2023, is not good. We know that. We know there are additional pressures. But what it might mean is that your planning will need to take longer. So if you're still adamant that the career change is the right one for you, it might be that it's something we've got to save towards. It's something we've got to plan towards. Or we have to problem solve it in a different way. So if it's a case of shifting quite dramatically career or job wise, then obviously training costs. So maybe you can do a year's worth of savings or 2 years worth of savings, or doing something via the Open University, something so you can do it whilst you're carrying on in your existing position. Or alternatively, what I have found with some people is that even within their current role, the kind of things that they're looking for might be a project or might be a slight shifter of role. And sometimes within big organizations, the kind of right job is there without even leaving the company. So, for example, I know somebody that worked in the Tesco warehouse. Excuse me. Very good, but there were complications with that job. And then he's ultimately ended up in security and checking the CCTV cameras and being responsible for that and the prosecutions and the legality of people who shoplift, etc., whether it's staff or the public. So it was a change of role within the same organisation. So I think often it's a case of problem solving, thinking laterally, being really ruthless about what it is I can afford to do, then being honest about what is it I genuinely want. Am I just kicking off because I've got the worst boss and that's making me miserable? Or is there other things? And then once you get that sort of picture together, is in solving each little problem in turn and then making sure that they aren't a factor, or if they are, that you're actually going to do something about them. And then it's back to your goal sheet. So, any kind of shift, especially if it's a dramatic shift in career, doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be next week. It can be a year or 2 year plan. And you can just say, right, okay, so it's going to take me a while to maneuver it. the training that I need is going to take a year or two, but I can get there. And knowing that you can achieve that goal, even if it's in 5 years or longer, is certainly going to help you in today's predicament, rather than feeling you're just overwhelmed, you're frustrated, and nothing's right. You think, right, okay, I just need to hunker down. I need to focus on my role as it is at the moment. And if I can't make it immediately better, at least I know this is just short term, and ultimately it's not going to be a lead weight for me, in the future. So I think that really covers career changes. Goal sheet, make sure you're being honest about who you are. So revisit the personal values, your SWOTs, those kind of things. And then those will also help you if indeed it is a career change or job change that you need. If it's an issue within your environment and it comes down to communication, then equally those are something that you can address. And I will see if I've got time to do sessions on dealing with management, that kind of thing. But even if there's not a coaching video here, there's certainly, I mentioned Simon Sinek, there's certainly people out there that can give you, help, and YouTube videos on, dealing with managers, dealing with conflict, dealing with bullying in the workplace, all of those kind of things. And it's amazing when you feel informed, how much more empowered you feel to do things. So best of luck. Happy job hunting, and I hope you have a happy career. Remember, you do your job for 40 hours a week, more maybe. So it's really important that it's something you enjoy, something you get something from. And if it isn't, do change it. Make some changes. Do something so it's something that you feel good about doing on a day-to-day basis. Be good for your mental health and good for your stress levels. Okay, take care. Bye.